Do you still masturbate after the age of 60? If you do, that's not a bad thing. But if you're doing it too much, you might be silently destroying yourself without even knowing it. I once examined a 66-year-old man. He told me, "I'm still healthy, I still have desire. I masturbate every day regularly like taking medicine. But lately, I don't feel anything anymore. No pain, no pleasure, no connection. Just repetition and the emptiness that follows." He wasn't weak because of age. He was weak because he never gave his body a chance to rest and recover. In my previous video, I talked about men who stopped masturbating completely and ended up with penile tissue shrinkage, lost reflexes, and decreased testosterone. But today I want to talk about the opposite. About men who still masturbate regularly. Who still do what men are supposed to do. But when done the wrong way, that very act is slowly killing their emotions, sexual nerves, and ability to achieve an erection. If you're a man over 60, you've probably heard conflicting advice. Some say you should stop completely. Others say, keep doing it, it's good for your health. But no one teaches you how to know when it becomes too much. If you feel dependent, if every time ends in exhaustion, regret, or emotional emptiness, if you find yourself no longer excited by real intimacy, only by intense or artificial content, then this video is for you. It's not that I lost my manhood. I just repeated it so many times, it no longer meant anything. You're not wrong for touching yourself. You're not wrong for still having desire. The mistake begins when you stop listening to your body. When you continue out of habit, not connection. And when you slowly lose real sensation, little by little, day by day. There are men who masturbate daily, but feel less and less like men. I'm a urologist and I believe, after 60, every man deserves an honest conversation about desire, without shame. Because it's a part of your identity. And if you lose it, you'll feel like you've lost yourself. If you care about natural sexual health, about keeping your confidence, your sensations, and your masculine identity after 60, subscribe to this channel. Because this is where I share things you'll never find on a prescription pad, but that can save the rest of your life. The first sign, you're losing response to real women. The very first sign I see in many male patients over 60 is this. They no longer respond to real women. They still masturbate regularly. They still reach climax. But when they're next to a real woman, whether it's a longtime spouse or a new partner, they don't feel anything anymore. No excitement. No reaction. No emotion. And when I dig a little deeper, they often confess, "I only get turned on when I watch videos. With a real person, I just feel awkward and tired." This is a classic sign of stimulation miswiring. A phenomenon that happens when a man masturbates too often but loses connection to his real inner desire. You might think it's just a matter of personal preference. But in reality, it's a reprogramming of the brain's sexual wiring. Your brain starts responding only to intense visuals, fast-paced scenes, and exaggerated fantasies, instead of natural cues like closeness, eye contact, skin scent, or emotional warmth from a real woman. When this rewiring happens, the biological emotions that used to bring you joy, intimacy, and bonding begin to fade away. I realized I could still ejaculate, but I had lost the ability to feel a woman with my heart. Some patients have told me they no longer hug their wives, no longer want to be close, talk, or even simply lie next to someone. Not because they stopped loving, but because they no longer respond to real feelings. And the scary part is, they don't notice until it's too late. When the relationship has grown cold. When their partner starts asking, "Do you even want me anymore?" And they don't know what to say. Not because they don't want to, but because their bodies have been retrained in a different direction. Away from real life, away from real connection. And if you've started noticing, you only get aroused by watching videos. You lose interest in physical closeness with real people. You no longer want to engage, touch, or simply hold someone. This is no longer about preference. This is a neurological warning. And you need to take a serious look at how you're masturbating, the frequency, the content, the emotion, and whether it's pulling you away from your natural instincts. Remember, masturbation isn't bad. But when it makes you lose the ability to feel real emotions with real people, it's destroying a very deep part of who you are. The second sign: emptiness, fatigue, and regret after every time. The second sign I often see in men over 60 is this: the emptiness that follows every time they masturbate. It's not that they can't climax. It's not that they've lost desire. But right after they finish, there's a wave of tiredness, sadness, and emptiness, as if they just lost something they can't name. This isn't uncommon. In fact, it's called post-ejaculatory sadness, a real phenomenon. And in men who masturbate frequently, especially without emotional connection, this feeling becomes more and more frequent. I once asked a patient of mine, "How do you feel after each time you masturbate?" He paused, then replied, "I feel empty. Like I just consumed something that didn't nourish me at all." Biologically speaking, after every ejaculation, your brain experiences a sharp drop in dopamine, the chemical that drives pleasure, motivation, and connection. And if this pattern happens over and over, without real intimacy, without true closeness, your nervous system slowly becomes imbalanced. You may start noticing you feel tired even without doing anything intense. You lose motivation. You become irritable, restless, or emotionally dull. Worse, a quiet, unexplained shame creeps in right after you finish. I once believed that just doing it to relieve stress was harmless. But over time, it made me feel like I no longer wanted to live as a man. When masturbation becomes a coping mechanism, to avoid loneliness, stress, or emptiness, it's no longer physiological, it's psychological dependence. Many men don't come to me because they can't do it. They come to me because they feel nothing afterward, except emptiness. They still get erections, still ejaculate. But what follows is chronic fatigue, poor sleep, anxiety, and sometimes a need to isolate themselves. And this doesn't just impact mental health. It directly affects a man's sense of self. One man once told me, "Doctor, I feel like a puppet of my own impulses. I don't touch myself because I want to, but because I'm afraid of how empty I feel if I don't." If you've ever felt tired after each time, regret or shame immediately afterward, like you're repeating something meaningless, then maybe you don't need to stop masturbating completely. But you do need to reevaluate your relationship with your body. The question is no longer, how much is too much? The question is, am I doing this with connection, or am I just running from something inside me? The third sign: no more morning erections, needing stronger stimulation to react. The third sign I often see in men over 60 who continue to masturbate regularly is this: they no longer wake up with an erection. Morning erections used to be a reliable signal that your sexual nerves and blood vessels were working well. But when your mornings pass quietly, without any sensation, and your penis feels soft, cold, or lifeless, that's not just aging. That's your sexual nervous system saying, "I'm overloaded." Every time you masturbate, you're using a specific amount of neural energy to activate an erection, pleasure, and ejaculation. But if you do it too frequently, without giving your body enough time to rest and recover, those nerve signals become dulled, the reflex weakens, and sensitivity fades bit by bit. I once asked a 67-year-old patient, "Do you still get natural morning erections?" He shook his head. "No, doctor. Now only when I watch something intense or use my hands more aggressively does it react." At that moment I understood. He hadn't lost his manhood. He was simply numbed by the intensity of stimulation he had been creating. If you need strong, fast, aggressive stimulation just to achieve an erection, that means your natural erection reflex is breaking down. And if this continues, the tiny blood vessels in the penis, which are delicate and require recovery, begin to lose elasticity. They become damaged, fibrotic, and eventually lead to chronic erectile dysfunction. I no longer felt like a man, even though I was still doing what men usually do. That was a line that stopped me in my tracks. It came from a man who had never cheated on his wife, never had major illness, never took erectile dysfunction meds, and yet still lost the ability to feel himself. Why? Because he never gave his body time to rest. Because every time he touched himself, he wasn't listening, he was forcing. Are you in a similar place? No more morning erections. Needing long, intense stimulation to feel anything. Feeling like your penis is no longer alive, but more like a part of your body that's waiting to be called, and no one's calling. This is not a small matter. It's an early warning. Your body is asking for rest, renewal, and true reconnection. Morning erections are not useless. They are your body's signal that you still have your male instincts and your biology is still responsive without outside stimulation. And if you're losing that, stop for a moment. Don't just get it over with. Don't push yourself harder and harder hoping to feel something. Go back to natural sensation, to breathing, to emotion, to the truth. You don't need to go harder or faster. You need to go slower, less often, and at the right time. Real patient case from my clinic. I clearly remember a patient, 67 years old. Lean build, still agile, and a spark in his eyes that showed he was still very much alive inside. He didn't come to my clinic because of a clear illness, but because of a sensation that was slowly disappearing. When I asked why he was there, he answered honestly, "Doctor, I still masturbate, once a day regularly like taking medicine. But lately I feel like there's nothing left inside." I was surprised. He hadn't lost his desire. In fact, he still had urges, still sought stimulation. But the issue was, the more he did it, the less emotion he felt. He explained that at first, simple fantasies or gentle images were enough. But over time he had to escalate, stronger content, longer duration, more intense stimulation. And even then he didn't feel satisfied. In fact, after each session he felt tired, empty, and at times couldn't even finish. I conducted a thorough physical exam. No major underlying conditions. No obvious vascular or neurological damage. But there was one major red flag. He had lost reflexes in the genital region. No slight retraction. No response to gentle touch along the shaft, a basic reflex in any healthy man. I asked, "When was the last time you felt genuine attraction to a real woman?" He paused, then quietly said, "I still have the need, but I no longer feel any excitement. It's like I abandoned myself." That sentence hit hard. Because this wasn't just a physiological issue, it was a deep emotional fracture. I explained, when you masturbate too frequently, especially when relying on extreme content, the brain's dopamine system gets thrown off balance. It becomes addicted to intensity and begins to see natural, real-life stimulation as dull. Over time, you need more to feel less. Eventually, you lose connection not just to your body, but to what truly matters. A hug, a glance, genuine intimacy. I advised him to take a break for 3 weeks. No masturbation, no porn. Just breathing exercises, light activity, meditation, and a return to emotional awareness. 1 month later he came back and said, "It wasn't easy, but at least I've started to feel again." I realized for 5 years I wasn't relieving tension. I was numbing myself. The 3 signs I shared today are not meant to make you feel guilty. They're meant to help you recognize when masturbation stops being a release and starts becoming a quiet burden on your nervous system, hormones, and emotional well-being. Let's recap. Sign 1. You only respond to videos or intense fantasies, but feel nothing when close to a real person. Sign 2. After every session you feel empty, tired, or even regretful, like something inside you is slipping away. Sign 3. You've lost your morning erections and now you need stronger, more intense stimulation just to feel something. If you recognize one of these signs, don't be afraid. Because the solution isn't always to stop completely, but to adjust properly. Masturbation isn't wrong. But if it's making you weaker, more disconnected, or no longer truly alive, then something needs to change. And you're not alone. Many men over 60 are facing the same quiet struggle. I've seen them. I've walked with them. And I know this. You can recover. So where do you stand? Are you still feeling real emotions? Or are you just stuck in a habit that no longer brings you joy? Leave a comment below. I will read it, and I will respond. Because maybe your story will be the answer another man needs to hear. And if you saw yourself in any of these 3 signs, don't worry. In the next video, I'll show you exactly how to recover your erectile tissue and natural hormone balance after years of overstimulation. Next, how to recover from over-masturbation after 60.